Okay, let me try this again. There we go. I guess that works. Okay. Hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to DGSE 395 Applied Digital Studies. This is my stream for section 2, which is the 250 section. So I'm getting started 3 minutes late, but not too bad. Kind of ran over with the first section, so hopefully that's all right. Well, hi, good afternoon. This is, what you see on the screen right now is a survey that I just sent. It's in Netflix. I mean, it's in Canvas. It's about Netflix, and I sent a link in Discord, so you maybe saw it there. Or also, if you're in Canvas, you should see it as like a thing that's due today. Obviously, it's not really graded. It's just a survey, so don't worry about it. Even though, as you see here, for some reason, Canvas insists on referring to one of the answers as the correct answer. It is not the correct answer. It is just one of two possible answers, and you should be, honest and tell me what the answer is for you. Basically, I'm trying to find out how. Who has access to Netflix, and if anyone needs a different way to get access to Netflix. I will show you a different way for general purposes, but the idea is that I want us to be able to watch that episode of Black Mirror called Hang the DJ and talk about it in class on Friday. The challenge is that some of you may not have access to Netflix. So if you do have Netflix, please go ahead and watch it. It might be fun to try to coordinate watching all at the same time, but it may be too much to coordinate at this point, so let's just forget that for now. But later on, we may watch other episodes of things on Netflix, so we may coordinate a viewing time or do that during class one day or something, but for now, just watch it on your own. As you watch it, you will notice there are things related. Hopefully you'll notice things related to what we've been talking about this week in terms of algorithms and people and their relationships to each other. So check that out. It's the episode Hang the DJ. I don't remember, I can't link directly to it because it's on Netflix, but hopefully you can find it once you get Netflix open. And please watch it. In terms of content, I guess I should mention a couple things about it. It is not gross or disturbing. Some episodes of Black Mirror are, and this one is not. This one is somewhat uplifting, I would say, in tone. It does, however, it does include depictions of sexual activity between adults. It's part of the character development in this episode, so I don't think it's gratuitous or pornographic in any way, but it does exist, it does happen. Adults having consensual sex. So, FYI, there you go. But watch it, let me know what you think about it, and we'll have some discussion of it in class on Friday, probably mostly using Discord, although I will probably still stream at least to introduce that class discussion and maybe talk about some things on the notebook. So take a look at it here in Canvas, let me know what you're thinking. Now, so let me show you something here. And I already did this once, but I would like to do it again. So this is, I'm using this Google Doc just to kind of demonstrate something as a place for me to type. So there's nothing special here. But let's say that you've had Netflix in the past. Maybe you've done a free trial and decided you didn't want to do it, or maybe you just canceled your subscription because you weren't watching it often enough or whatever. If you try to sign up for a new free trial of Netflix, Netflix will probably tell you, hey, you can't do that because you've already done it once. When you sign up for a new account, right, you can sign up with a Gmail address, and if you want to use, like, for example, your Gmail address, this is mine. Please don't use mine, actually, but it won't work. But this is my Gmail address, and what I'm going to try to show you is a way to spoof a Gmail address or give a different version of your Gmail address to different websites. So this is sometimes called the infinite Gmail trick, and it doesn't always work. Some websites are set up so that they will know that you're doing this, and they'll say, hey, you can't do that. A lot of websites just don't care. So last time I tried this on Netflix, it works. It's been a while, though, so maybe they've changed. I don't know. The point is that when you go to sign up for a new account, you want to use your Gmail address. It has to be, and if you want to do, when you sign up for a new account, you have to sign up with a Gmail address or some email address, and it needs to be a unique one. The thing about Gmail addresses that a lot of people don't know is that if I type my address like this, Zach.Whalen, and then add a plus sign, Netflix is great, and then anything else, and then at gmail.com, that still works. So Zach.Whalen plus anything I want to put here still works, and it goes to my inbox, and there's a link there that I can click to confirm that I really have access to this Gmail account. Netflix, though, views it as a unique account and says, hey, welcome to Netflix. Maybe it works. I've used this on Netflix and Hulu and CBS All Access. And I forget what else, but I do it frequently, and it's useful. Another thing that is another practical use of this is whenever you're signing up for some website, you're not sure if it's legit or whatever. If you sign up with Zach.Whalen plus and then something like the website's name at gmail.com or whatever, obviously use your own Gmail, then if you start seeing spam coming in and it's not being addressed to this Gmail, it's being addressed to this Gmail, well, that sketchy website sold your Gmail address to somebody else that's sending you spam. And then you can also set up a filter in your Gmail to automatically delete anything that's sent to that address. So it's a useful little trick, and I'm not sure the origin of it or why Gmail set it up that way, but there it is. So hope you all are doing well. I wanted to get that particular thing out of the way, but as usual, if you have any issues as I'm streaming or questions or anything else, then let me know. If you can't hear me, definitely let me know. But it looks like things are coming through smoothly. Let me just check to make sure I'm on the right microphone. I was on the wrong one this morning, so let me make sure I'm on the right one. And I am, so hopefully it sounds pretty clear. So today the idea is, looking at the notebook, you had some homework, and so I want to talk about that and maybe work through a little bit of it, and then get you talking about some of it. So this is a discussion kind of day. You'll see some new channels in Discord, and I'm not going to pull up Discord like usual, but a couple things that I wanted to tell you about. In the text channels, like the main text channels area, there's a new channel called Tech Support, and that's a place to ask questions if you're having an issue with something, if you're having some kind of problem. As you can see, if you look at that channel right now, Crystal had a pretty unusual error, and thankfully I was able to help. I think I figured out what was going on, and in any case, this suggestion I proposed to her actually worked, so that's good. If you have issues like that or any issues at all with code, please ask. I mean, you can email me, but also putting it here in this channel is great because someone else might see your problem and know what to do about it before I have a chance to, and then then your answer will be, your question will be answered, and your problem will be solved, and everything will be great. So please use that for that kind of thing as it comes up. Also, I created some breakout discussion channels under the stream category, and those are things we'll be using a little bit later. So I'm going to hold off explaining those for now. Yeah, just let me know. Or just, don't let me know. Just wait for me to explain. Just be patient for a second. Okay, so what else? What next? Okay, so let's take a look in the notebook, because what I wanted to do is kind of talk through what you should have prepared by now and make sure that you're clear on how the Python stuff works, and say a few things about that, just to make sure that you're ready to go with that. So here we are. This was Monday, and we did a brief introduction to things, talking about programming and mainly kind of introducing the notebook structure. There's an explainer video here by Kathy O'Neill about algorithms, and I do want to watch that in a moment. Then we've got some code practice that you were supposed to do. And this is kind of, I've written this going down. This is my copy, by the way, so yours will look different, and if you are looking at the original, it will also look different. For example, I've already changed this greeting. So let me show you a couple of things that maybe, if you are working with this kind of thing for the first time, may have not been totally clear. This is your first bit of code, and when you run this, it'll connect to a runtime. The notebook does that automatically. So it just says print hello world. This is the print statement. The print function here says take whatever's in the parentheses and try to print it. And here, if it prints out the word hello world, then it's successful. So a code cell doesn't always print something out. In some cases, and even in this notebook, there are some cases where if the code runs successfully, nothing happens, or you don't see something happen. Something does happen on the computer on Python, but it doesn't tell you anything. It just learns something and knows something now. So for example, if I actually down here on this in this cell, I've changed the value of greeting to it is Wednesday, my dudes. Originally it said hello world, and now as I've prompted myself here, I've changed the value of the greeting variable, so now it prints whatever this new value is. So you can see what it does there. But here, let me comment this out. So to do a comment in Python, I haven't mentioned this yet, but if you put a hash mark at the beginning of a line, it will not actually be read by Python. It's still there, so I can read it, but Python doesn't read it at all. So when I run this one, nothing's going to happen. It doesn't need to happen because I haven't told it to do anything. All I've told it is that this is a variable called greeting, and it has this value, which is the string of text characters that read out, it is Wednesday, my dudes. So it's not going to print anything, but it's perfectly valid Python, and it works fine. It's just I don't see anything. If I take this off, it's going to restore that bit of code, and now it will print that phrase. So yeah, that's what's going on with these cells. But as it says here, I want you to change this into some other kind of greeting, because I'm trying to gradually introduce you to the idea of code, and editing code that's what programming is editing text. And so if you can edit this text, then you are a programmer. So congratulations. Okay, so then the next little bit here gets into something that's a little bit abstract, and so I'm not going to read out what I've written here, but I'll explain it again, and maybe this helps. This is a variable called greeting, and it has this value, which is a string of characters. And so a string is a very important kind of data. It's a type of data, which is text, and it's literally just text. We call those strings. Strings have certain things you can do to them, certain things you can't do to them. Two other important kinds of values here are integers and floats, and these are two different categories of numbers. Integers are whole numbers, floats are decimal numbers, and they can be equivalent. So 50 as an integer, the integer 50 is equivalent to the float 50.0. And that's pretty intuitive and common sense, really. We're using Python 3 here, by the way. In Python 2, that distinction between integers and floats is much more important, and you have to really know which one you're dealing with. But here in Python 3, that's become much more intuitive, I think, and they pretty much go back and forth easily. So that's a good thing, and there's a complication to it that you hopefully won't ever encounter. But if you get some weird math, then that might be what's going on. Okay, so trying out numbers, that's what we're doing, and we can add numbers together. And what you're finding here is that context matters. So here in this line 4 of this cell, I've got score plus 50, right? So it's addition. So it's the plus sign there means add this score value to this 50, and then the new result should be it's 50 again because it's 0 plus 50, but we could change this to something else and hopefully get the right answer. right? So this is showing us that this has worked, and the plus sign here means the mathematical arithmetical plus, right? Plus in a string context means something different. So if we have a string on this side and a string on that side, that's called, it's going to do something called concatenation. It's going to stick this one on the end of this one, and it's going to give us the result. So my prompt here, I originally had it written as hello world, just hello plus world, and the result, as you see, is a kind of combined word, hello world. My instructions are to adjust line 1 so that it prints more naturally, the kind of thing you would normally see. So you could do it like that. Add a space after hello. You could add a space before world. You could probably do this in many more complicated ways. Like you could do, let's say, you could add a space, another space string right there. This is a separate string, but it's just the space character by itself. You could join it. Like you could do all kinds of things. You could join, I don't know. You could do lots of different ways you can print hello world. And the point is just to get something that works and looks good, and to pay attention to what you have to do, how the values can be changed and the results can change as a result. Okay, so I'm kind of just summarizing what I've already done here, so hopefully this is something that you've already seen and worked through on your own. It made sense when you did it. This part, though, is something I'm not going to explain. This is the error. And so as you see here, it is, I know it's going to produce an error. It's hard to say that word sometimes. It's not going to work. Your challenge, or the thing I'm challenging you with, is to see if you can figure out how to solve this problem. The solution is not in the notebook. It's not something that I've already told you that you should remember. It's something that I want to see if you can figure out. And there are some things you might be able to do to figure this out. There are clues in the notebook. One of the clues is actually just in this error message that I just got. So the type error, that's the error. The Python is saying there is something going on in terms of types. Remember, string is a type, integer is a type, float is a type. Those are the 3 types that we've met so far. And there's something wrong with types. In fact, it's saying something must be a string, not int. So it's saying, I expected something to be a string, but I got an integer instead. So what should we do about that? That's kind of your challenge, I suppose. So the trick is see what you can do to figure this out. Now, when I run into a code problem, almost always I Google it, or I just go straight to Stack Overflow and search for it there. And the nice thing about Colab notebooks, one of several nice things, is they've got that button built into the error message. So whenever Python prints out an error, there's a button that says Search Stack Overflow. And if you click that, it takes you to a search of the Stack Overflow site with that phrase from the error message. And you can see several people posing questions and trying to solve other people's problems where that error message was part of the problem. The Stack Overflow is a community of people that try to help each other code, and it's a great way to learn. But honestly, a lot of times if I have a pretty complicated problem and I find an answer on Stack Overflow, a lot of times when people solve each other's problems, they'll say, here's a block of code that works. So a lot of times I'll just find that block of code and I'll copy and paste it and it works. And I don't always understand why. I try to understand why, but sometimes if it works, and then that's good enough and we can move on. When I do that, by the way, I do always try to give credit to whoever wrote that code that I copied. So I'll add a comment in my code and say, hey, I got this from this Stack Overflow post. So I'm going to close that out, but that's kind of your challenge. See if you can figure it out. I'm not going to explain it right now, but I bet you can figure this out if you do a little of digging and critical thinking, I guess. If you have not figured it out by Friday, I will tell you on Friday. Okay. So in the notes here for today, there's some things to, these are the notes for Monday. There's some things for you to write. If you are able to write this, make sure you document what you did. So did you search Stack Overflow? If so, did that make sense, what you found? Did you ask someone, like what did you do that helped you figure that out? Because I want you to notice the things that you do to solve problems, because that's really what this class is ultimately about, is solving problems and teaching you to solve your own problems, basically. Okay, so if you have any questions about the code stuff, of course, put it out there. Let's see, there was something. Okay, yeah. So let's take a look. I just saw Devin saying, wow, that's so cool. I don't know what they're talking about because that was a few minutes ago at this point. I don't remember what was happening 11 minutes ago. Maybe the Google trick. Okay, so let's take a look at algorithms, and what I'd like to do is actually play this whole video because it's pretty short. This is a short explainer video put together by RSA, whatever that is. But it's Kathy O'Neill, the author of the book Weapons of Math Destruction, and she's giving us a really good explanation of what algorithms are and some things we need to keep in mind about algorithms. So I believe the audio is going to come through if I click play here. Let's find out.
I worked as a mathematician and then as a quant in finance. I saw the worst of finance. I went into data science and I was struck by what I thought was essentially a lie, namely that algorithms were being presented and marketed as objective fact. A much more accurate description of an algorithm is that it's an opinion embedded in math. An algorithm is a very general concept. It's something that we do actually in our heads every day. To build an algorithm, we need only two things, essentially: a historical data set and a definition of success. So I build an algorithm to cook dinner for my family. The data that I use on a daily basis is the ingredients in my kitchen, sometimes the time I have, the ambition I have for that dinner. And then I assess the dinner after the fact. Was it a success? I define that because I'm the one who's building the meals. I'm in charge. I have the power. So there's always a power element here. So I get to decide a meal is successful if my kids ate vegetables. My kids, if they were in charge, would have defined it differently. And it matters because as we optimize over time, we optimize to success. The succession of meals that I cook from month to month is a very different path of meals than if my son were in charge. So we do that every time we build algorithms. We curate our data, we define success, we embed our values into algorithms. So when people tell you algorithms make things objective, you say no. Algorithms make things work for the builders of the algorithms. In general, we have a situation where algorithms are extremely powerful in our daily lives, but there's a barrier between us and the people building them. And those people are typically coming from a kind of homogeneous group of people who have their particular incentives. If it's in a corporate setting, usually profit, and not usually a question of fairness for the people who are subject to their algorithms. So we always have to penetrate this fortress. We have to be able to question the algorithms themselves, especially when they're very important to us. We have to inject ethics into the process of building algorithms, and that starts with data scientists agreeing and signing to a Hippocratic oath of modeling. But we have to stop blindly trusting algorithms to be fair. They are not inherently fair, and start looking into what they're actually doing.
All right, so there are a couple of really important takeaways in there, or things that I noticed and wanted to comment on some more. But if you had things that you thought were really compelling about that, or points you wanted to make about it, then feel free to jump in on chat, Discord or Twitch. Probably Discord is better for any thoughts you have or questions you have about different parts of that. The couple of key points I wanted to really zoom in on. So let me pull up the transcript here. There it is. So she talks about a lie. She says, I went into data science and I was struck by what I thought was essentially a lie, namely that algorithms were being presented as objective fact. A much more accurate description of an algorithm is that it's an opinion embedded in math. Sometimes she expresses it like it's an opinion formalized in code. And I think that's a really important point, and it's something that is hard to really understand. I mean, we can understand it intellectually, we can kind of know it, but understanding how that plays out is really, it is a difficult point to make sometimes, because I believe she's right that algorithms are very often marketed and thought of as facts because they're math. And you might say, well, numbers can't be ambiguous. Of course, they're going to give us the right answer all the time, but that's not really what we're talking about when we're talking about algorithms. The fact that they have to do with math has nothing to do with their efficacy or their objectivity. The math isn't the part of it that is the danger. It's what people believe about the math that is the potential for benefit or harm for any kind of algorithm. So if you think about it, even though I, of course, know this and I've read this book and I believe this author, I still have a tendency to over-attribute objectivity to algorithmically devised information. So things like the weather report, things like the first page of Google results, I tend to think, well, this must be true, more true than my general impression of something, because an algorithm said it was true, because the computer said this is the answer, and so I tend to think, well, that must be the answer because Google said so. And even though I don't literally say that to myself, I often act as though that's the thing that I believe, and you probably do too. I mean, when was the last time you made it to page 3 of Google search results when you're trying to find something out? Almost never, right? Like we almost never go past the first page, and that's kind of sad in a way, but it's also evidence to how persuasive this rhetoric of the algorithm is. And I think it really is a rhetoric more so than a mathematical kind of thing. It's a set of communication situations and beliefs that we inject into those situations that that's what's really at stake, and that's really what's making the difference when we talk about or respond to or think about the ways in which our lives are shaped by algorithmic decision making. Some people in the Discord, I asked to think of examples of weapons of math destruction. Some people talked about self-driving cars, predictive algorithms. Absolutely, yeah. There's lots of situations, lots of scenarios where algorithmic thinking has very explicit and very visible potential consequences, like the self-driving car. That's a very dramatic situation, right? If a car makes a bad decision, that could be very harmful, but also it could be, I don't know, it would be like, whose fault is it? Is it the car's fault, or is it the driver's fault, or the programmer's fault who made it possible for that car to make the mistake that it made? There's several different issues that get raised whenever we think about these kinds of things. So let's see, there's some questions here. So the, where was I? Live stream chat. Oh yeah. So I forget, somebody brought up the issue with COVID-19, and of course we are being deluged with algorithmic thinking around the virus. And one of the things that we can see, like sometimes models, I don't know how much of this you dig into yourself. Sometimes I go back and forth. Sometimes I avoid it for several days. Sometimes I really get focused on a particular model. But all these models are algorithms, and they're trying to describe what's going to happen in the future. But the decision of what to give weight to in those models makes a huge difference. And as Brian, I think, pointed out, the degree to which you account for different cultural and geographic factors could really skew your model in all kinds of different ways, especially if your model is something that people are going to be making decisions based on. So, there's a lot at stake potentially, especially in health contexts around algorithms. And the more we know about the models, the better. And so I think the best models, like the one is on healthdata.org, I forget who runs that. I think it's a federal agency, but they do a pretty good job of explaining how they get at their models and what data they're using. 538, the website, they don't produce their own models, but they give you kind of an aggregate of different models, and they show you how those different models are constructed, and you can compare them. It's really interesting, and that's the kind of thing we need. We need algorithms that are transparent, but also we need a certain kind of algorithmic literacy to be able to understand those differences and understand the extent to which these are opinions, and these may be expert opinions, but these are not facts. So we need to understand that that's an important thing to keep separate. Like those are separate things. So anyway, lots of things to talk about with that. And I think the story that I asked you to look at with by Lee Alexander gives us some examples of things to think about in terms of recommendations and algorithmic thinking. So let me go back to, where was I? The notebook. There it is. And so again, if you think of anything to add to that or about that video, certainly share it in Discord. Someone just posted a couple of unusual recommendations that they've gotten from YouTube. I will have to look at that later, I guess. So I don't want to pull it up because it might be super inappropriate. I don't know, or it might not be. But there's a lot to say about it, right? I don't know. I'm going to look at that later. I don't know what that is. Okay, so it looks like a frog on the thumbnail, but I'm not going to click on it right now. Okay, so let's take a look at The Soft Truth by Lee Alexander. And what originally drew me to the story when it first came out was I guess the subtitle, or at least this was the title that I saw, I think on Twitter, somebody linked to it with this text, that this is an Algowave short fiction. So it's a short story and it's something that Alexander or somebody, an editor maybe, has decided should be called Algowave, which I think is a really interesting term. So if this is, and this is the only example of Algowave I've found, there may be others by now, but, and I have other examples of fiction that deal with algorithms, but this one seems like of and for and about algorithms in a really deeply ingrained way, and so I think Algowave is a good word for this. Probably can't hear it, but somebody's rolling something above me. I don't know what it is, but something is rolling back and forth on the ceiling. Okay, so this is the story, and here's what I'd like to do as far as a discussion for this story. This, by the way, is kind of what I intend to do on days of class once we get back to the face-to-face, the split hybrid model that we're going to try to figure out. Now that we are going back, right? I'll be creating some pathways basically in notebooks for you to kind of see what's what. But what I'm about to get you started with is a version of an online class that's based on discussion as opposed to lecture. And so here's what I'd like to recommend, or like what I'd like to ask you to do. So this is a story I have it pulled up here. Of course, you've read it already. It's not super long. But it's really interesting, and I would like to hear you respond to it on a couple of questions. So if you look in Discord now, these questions have already been explored a bit with section 1, and so you can add to what they've already said about it. But if you go to breakout 1, breakout 2, breakout 3, breakout 4, these are questions under the stream category. They are, and I'm going to pin the questions to each one. So sorry, let me go ahead and pin it while I'm not going to try to talk and pin at the same time. Okay, so. Okay, so if you go to there we go. So go under the stream category and you'll see breakout 1, 2, 3, and 4. And for each of those channels, what I've done is I've pinned a discussion question to the top of that channel. And these are pretty open-ended questions. A couple are maybe more plot-oriented kind of interpretation questions, but you can take these in a number of different ways. I would say feel free to be creative with it, or just go with it. You don't have to respond to anything that someone else wrote from section 1, but if you see a particularly good idea or expression, you're welcome to quote them or respond to them, but have your own conversation too. I'm not assigning you to a specific question. I'm just directing you to take a look at breakout 1, 2, 3, and 4, and respond to or participate in whichever channel has a conversation you have something to say about, that you have something to add to. So for breakout 1, the question is, why do you think the narrator got fired? That is an event that seems to happen during this story, and we don't get a lot of explanation about it, but we do get some hints. So what do you think? Breakout 2, your question is, or the question here for whoever is interested in answering it, why are there at least 2 of the narrator? She speculates, she fears at one point that there may be lots of her, but she knows there is at least one of her, one more of her out there that she keeps seeing in the world. It's an example of the doppelganger trope, I guess, or folk tale or horror story, whatever. For breakout 3, the question is, what do you think happens to the narrator at the end? And this to me is the big question. Well, it's actually not the big question, but in terms of plot, I think it is the big plot question. It's not the big thematic question, but it is the question I prompted you to think about and write an answer to in your notebook already. So you've already done that. So copy and paste your answer from there if you have it handy, or paraphrase it or do something with that, so that we can see and compare those thoughts. I have my theory about this, and I'm happy to share it, but I want to hear your thoughts too and see what you have to say first. And then finally, breakout 4, if you are interested, is what is your personal gelatin sphere video? So the character, the narrator in the story, is obsessed with a gelatin sphere video. So my question is, what is that video for you? And you can think of this a couple of ways, and you can see the group in section 1 kind of took it one way, and there is a second way that I intended this question, which is you could take this question as, what are the videos, what are your guilty pleasure video categories? Like the things you watch to relax or just because you're not sure what else to do and you just watch it. I go through different phases with those. And I don't know if it's YouTube kind of leading me to these phases or if lots of people are also doing this, but for a while it was woodworking videos. Even though I don't do much woodworking, then it was working on car stuff videos. And then recently it's been like tool and mechanical restoration videos where somebody is restoring an old tool that's super rusty, and by the end they get it all cleaned up and it looks nice. Also like sword making videos, which I am not interested in making swords myself, but the process is kind of interesting in the metalworking. So those are kind of videos that I tend to kind of binge on or indulge in. So that's one way to address my question of what is your gelatin sphere. The other thing though is, if you think about how this video exists in the story, it's kind of a MacGuffin. It's the thing that is driving this character. So what is that thing that you're always looking for? Like that thing that you think is out there on the internet, but you can't find it. That's another way to think of it, like your white whale, the thing that you remember seeing or you've heard about, but you just cannot find it. There are several things like that for me, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's at the point where I don't know if these are things I imagined or if they actually existed or not. So maybe there's something like that for you that you've always wanted to know about, or you look for occasionally and you still can't find it. So yeah, that's that question for Breakout 4. And you can contribute to one of these, or 2, or 4, or whichever, but at least one. Find something to add to in here, and then I'll let you do that for a few minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. And I'm going to keep the stream going, but I'm not going to be talking for a minute. I'm going to be in here. So this is for T Hummus on Twitch. Just choose one or more. Yeah, for this conversation, we don't have to be organized. Like, you don't have to go in a specified group. It's just whatever you're interested in. On other days of class, we might do this more in a more confined way. So you are not in a breakout group logistically or organizationally, just they each have different questions. So go to the one that has the question you want to answer, or that where you want to see what other people have said. And basically my plan was just to kind of try to observe all these conversations going at once and then add some thoughts. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think you all are right. So Amber, Emily, Wayne, and LG, you're saying you all are, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's something that she said or did or posted online. So what kind of thing? There is a theory. So LG Perez has a theory about possibly something Trump related. Maybe. Trying to emote from here, and I cannot seem to figure out how to do that. The Twitch chat thing still doesn't make sense to me. Just like the visual, like the physical interface of it, because I can't see the whole window, so I can't but it like pops up as though I can, and then like it's like displaying, but it's hidden, so you can't see the whole thing to click the thing. I don't know. Yeah. Yep. There you go. I think everybody's on the right page now. All right. So. Okay, interesting ideas coming in here from Little Gelato, saying there's a digital self and a real self, and so you're talking about the other that she sees out there as potentially the digital self. Yeah. So why do you think that is? Like, what are some of the clues that kind of points to that idea? And Amber also said something about the So Amber said the other is the digital self. So. And also, I think Amber I think you're correct to read into. There's a connection here. There's the physical other self that she actually literally sees at the grocery store, but then there's also there's a phrase that she and her boss and other people say at different points in the story that they refer to something they did in the past as, "Oh, that wasn't me," or "That was I'm a different person now," and that's a familiar turn of phrase, but here it almost takes on a literal kind of science fiction kind of meaning, where there's this person that actually seems to be another of her walking around, right? So that's sort of what's going on. It's weird here. That's the Twilight Zone or Black Mirror aspect of this, I think. But it gives us pause. I think it kind of helps us. It helps us, maybe zoom in on what's going on here. Yeah. Yeah, so I think looking at breakout 1, which is about what did she do why did she get fired? I think it is she must have done something, because there are people in public who recognize her that are not her friends or her colleagues, but like the person at the store recognizes her as, "Oh, that's you." So it seems like she's done something that has resulted in some kind of public shaming, and I don't know that there's a clear explanation of what that might be in the story, like what kind of thing. But I think the idea of public shaming, I don't know if it's something any of you have experienced. I have not, or anyone you know. But it is a feature of our life now that somebody does something dumb or loud or embarrassing, and it goes viral, and then they can have their life can be changed by that. I mean, there's a whole book about this called "So You've Been Publicly Shamed," I think is the title of the book. I haven't read it, but it sounds interesting. The idea is that there's this new thing that we take for granted, that it's okay to, the internet term is dox, but to like harass and kind of call out people whenever they do something bad, or sometimes do something really good. But when someone does something bad, when they get caught on video yelling at someone about masks or whatever, that's the kind of thing that can go viral, and then somebody in the comments says, "Oh, I know that person," and then that becomes they become identified, and then people flood their Facebook page, and then they end up deleting their Facebook. It happens all the time, every day, and it's something that it doesn't have to be named or described in specific detail in the story for us to, I think, recognize that that's the kind of thing that's happening here. So yeah, I don't know what she did. It could be something political, but it also could be, the way that those Trump headlines show up in the story. It could also just be part of the texture of the world, because that's just you can't escape headlines about Trump that sound ridiculous, and so you see those all the time, and so that might be just a bit of world flavor from this story, or it could be, you're right, that it's something being targeted algorithmically. Yeah, let's see what else. Yeah, and so there's something going on here. I'll just take point home. Yeah, maybe she did. So she learned to forgive herself, which is interesting. If that leads, I mean, that's a good sort of thematic way of wrapping it up. I think that there's also the question of like literally what happens. Like, does she call herself on the phone and ask to be let back into the apartment? Does she, go back to get a job? Does she, in my theory, she physically evaporates, like that she actually disappears at the end. That's what happened. That's what I think happens. That the end of the story is the end of this character, and that's it. There is no more of her. That's my take on it, but I don't want to. Yeah. So someone else with the mukbang. Okay, interesting. I don't get it. I don't get the appeal. So that's fine. Yeah, nostalgic media. Yeah, and they do have so many weird rabbit holes, as Megan's pointing out. But what I love about it too is there are so many rabbit holes that there could be entirely different universes on YouTube that have no contact with each other, and that's what's fun about this kind of thing. Okay, yeah. So and Wayne or Debbie Clever's talking about specific topics you can explore and follow. But is anyone I'm curious because maybe someone here will know the answer. Is there something that you've always looked for, that thing that you're trying to find on YouTube or anywhere else on the internet, that you know is out there, but you can't find it? And if you can describe it well enough, maybe the rest of us can help you find that. Maybe we will have some more information about that. Oh yeah, videos of people rescuing dogs. Yeah. There's also sometimes I'll go on a Gordon Ramsay binge. I don't know why. He's pretty entertaining when he yells at people, I guess. But also it's just kind of the show, the Hotel Hell show is the editing is so cheesy on it that it's just kind of mindlessly entertaining, right? But it's more I'm noticing how cheesy the editing is, and that's what I'm enjoying about it. Yeah. Well, just a few more minutes, so if you have any thoughts or questions, this would be a good time. I think also, yeah, you could be right, Jay Probst. But I think the public part of it must be something else, that it's something that's not necessarily Trump related, but something that just got out there. Yeah, you're right. So the mental illness aspect is something worth also thinking about. It could be some kind of OCD, or it could be a dissociative personality disorder, which is another explanation of why she keeps seeing other versions of herself out there. That in the kind of mental health context, that could be an explanation. Oh, okay. Interestingly, Lillian or LG Perez, I think I have a copy of that, Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland. I don't know if you're not in my graphic novel class, are you? Because I was talking about Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland today in that class. Not the movie you're talking about, but the original comic, and which is just Little Nemo in Slumberland. Now I'm blanking on the title because I've shifted gears into this class. But yeah, he and some of you were in that class, so I'm trying to remember who's in which. But yeah, Winsor McKay, cartoonist, produced the Little Nemo in Slumberland comics in the early 20th century. Very strange and weird, but beautiful and elegant and whimsical and light. And there is definitely a creepy edge, though, and that's what we noticed and in talking about it. But the movie you're talking about has a notoriously creepy villain or character of ink that swallows things up. That kind of thing does happen sometimes in Little Nemo comics, but it's usually sort of played off as a joke or a kind of fourth wall kind of thing. But in that movie, which I believe was a Miyazaki movie, they kind of personify that, and it becomes a much bigger thing. And really what's nice about that movie, if I remember correctly, is that it has much more conflict in it than the Little Nemo comics originally did, where in the comics it's really just Nemo trying to get to Slumberland and he fails. That's it every day. And there are really beautiful, imaginative scenarios for what he gets in his way. And just artistically, it's gorgeous, but narratively, it's not interesting at all. But that movie had to kind of create a narrative for it. So yeah, there was a movie. There's also a Nintendo game tie into that movie. So there is, yeah. Yeah, maybe never. Yeah. So Jesse Perry, almost like you. It sounds like you're alluding to it's called the Mandela effect. You probably have heard of this as a movie based on that now, I guess. But it's the idea that you remember something really clearly from childhood, but it turns out to be wrong. And there's a lot of people that remember certain things a certain way that turn out to be wrong, like the spelling of the Berenstain Bears. And that's a pretty famous one. So if you were to spell out the name of that book series, the Berenstain Bears, many people would spell it wrong, and then you look at the books that are spelled, of course, correctly, and then you feel like, what's happening here? Maybe I misremembered it, or maybe since all of us seem to remember it this other way, maybe that's how it really happened, and somehow we've fractured into this alternate dimension where it's spelled this way instead of the way I think it's spelled. So yeah, that's the kind of thing. But LG Perez, I will look for my copy of it and see if there's a way I can get that to you, or find pieces of it on YouTube. I don't know. The copy I remember having was like a bootleg of a VHS, so like a DVD burn from a VHS or something really terrible. So I don't know. I will, but I think it's in my office actually. So next time I'm there, I'll look for it. But I'll look around a little bit. But it definitely existed. That movie definitely existed. It was very different from the original comics in terms of tone and character. So people didn't really like it. So, I mean, people who were fans of the comic didn't necessarily like it, but it's a pretty good one. Yeah, good movie though. I think. I mean, the idea that it's good. But you can also find the you can play the Nintendo game that it was based on a couple of different emulator sites. So I'll look for that. Anyway, so the thing that so here's my thoughts on this story, just to wrap us up here, because I know we're just about out of time. Maybe overtime even, but let me just, this won't take long. So you know how you go to Amazon and you buy, let's say, a hat. You buy a hat on Amazon. When you buy a hat, or even when you look at a web page, like a listing for a hat, at the bottom it'll say, people who bought this also bought these things, or people that looked at this eventually bought this. And this idea that there are these people out there that are like you in that they also looked at this, I think that's the others that are in this story. So when there are others of this narrator, when she sees herself out there, these are the algorithmically implied other versions of all of us that each of these different algorithmically based services are really addressing. So whenever YouTube says, here's a video that I think Zach Whalen would like, its idea of Zach Whalen is not literally me or biologically me, but it's algorithmically me based on all the different things I've clicked on and the websites I've viewed. And maybe if you want to get really like paranoid about it, maybe the things that I've said when I was near a computer and it overheard me saying. But that idea of constructing a profile around what it thinks of as Zach Whalen in that case is just a node in a network of potential recommendations. And I think that's the others that show up here. And I don't know, maybe, sometimes you spend a lot of time looking for a certain kind of thing and then you stop looking for that kind of thing, or maybe YouTube stops suggesting it to you. I think that's what happens at the end of the story. I think the person we're hearing from here is the other. I think we're hearing from that, the narrator is one of those, or is the digitally created, the digital profile conglomerated from this actual person who we don't actually hear from in the story. And at the end of the story, once she's found the gelatinous cube, or gelatinous, what does she call it? The sphere, the gelatin sphere. She has no need to exist anymore because that question has been answered and that desire has been fulfilled. And so the real person who we're not actually hearing from here, she moves on to other things. She goes out and looks for a job, does whatever she needs to in her life, but that particular question is over, and so she's going to look for something else. So I think if this were a film, I think the narrator would literally evaporate at the end. I think she would stop existing at the end. So that's my take on it. I did find the actual video that she's talking about here. So I believe it's a repost of it because it doesn't have the same view count or title, but it seems to have, like, the description of the video that's in the story does seem consistent with what I'm seeing. And you can see, I love how she shows the search results screenshots here. These are very similar to screenshots that you can get now if you search for satisfying video. And yeah, I mean, you can see here, oh, what is that? Oh, that's like that stand. I don't like that, that's creepy. What's happening here? Okay, anyway, what? Like shaving a teddy bear? All right, so I'm not gonna get sucked in, but you see you see what I'm looking for. You see the point that there are these videos, and there's definitely an audience for these videos. But if you search for 1000-degree mesh, you'll get the video in question. Here's the thumbnail, and then there's this one, but I think it might actually be this one that actually has the yeah, at least one of these I clicked on, and just like she says in the video, in the story rather, it does not actually have that in the video that you click on. I think it was this one that's a tease, but I think it actually might show up in this one, or maybe this one. Anyway, that's kind of the quest, right? Like that's the quest that she's on. All right, well, thanks for discussing today. I'm going to wrap things up here. If you have any questions, of course, I will be online on Discord for a little while and email and other things. If you have any questions or issues about getting access to Netflix for Hang the DJ, you can enter that in the survey that I put through Canvas, or just send me a note through Discord or whatever else. I tried the streaming thing again through Discord. It didn't go great, so I don't know. Maybe I'll keep trying for that method, but at least for now, I'm pretty confident that most, if not all of you, will have access to Netflix. Let me check this results. This is just showing me the graph so far. Okay, great. So far, everyone has said they do have access to it, which is 27. So that's still a lot of you who still haven't done it yet, or haven't told me things here yet. So that may not end up being the case. But if you do have issues with Netflix, please let me know as soon as possible so I can help you find that alternative. Okay, thanks for watching. Have a good afternoon. I will be back streaming again on Friday, but we will be doing something kind of like we did today with a discussion around things. So I will be streaming, but you will be chatting in Discord, hopefully. Okay, thanks. Have a good afternoon. Bye.